I broke my arm and they forced me to work one-handed. How my dream job turned into a nightmare that almost destroyed me. I used to think I had landed my dream job. I was working as a software engineer in a mid-sized IT company that bragged constantly about its family culture. That phrase was plastered everywhere, in the onboarding documents, on motivational posters hanging in the office, and even repeated in every team meeting. We're more than just coworkers, the CEO loved to say. We're a family, and in this family, we always support one another. At first, I believed them. The office looked modern and trendy, beanbag chairs, coffee machines that brewed every possible flavor, and open workspaces with glass walls that made everything look transparent and friendly. My colleagues seemed smart, ambitious, and funny. We bonded over late-night coding sessions, complained about deadlines together, and even went out for drinks on Fridays. I thought I was part of something special, but then everything changed because of one accident. It was a normal Wednesday morning. I was rushing to the office, already thinking about the sprint tasks I had to finish before the client review. I was juggling my laptop bag, a coffee cup, and my phone when I tripped on the staircase outside the building. The fall was so fast I didn't even have time to catch myself properly. I landed awkwardly on my right arm. The pain was immediate, sharp, and overwhelming. My coffee spilled all over me. My phone clattered on the concrete, but I didn't even care. I knew something was seriously wrong. My coworkers who were coming in behind me gasped. "Dude, are you okay?" one of them asked. I couldn't even answer properly. My face twisted in pain, and I just muttered, "No, my arm. It's broken. I think it's broken." They helped me get up and rushed me to the nearest hospital. After a series of x-rays, the doctor came in shaking his head. "Well, you didn't just fracture it. You broke it clean. You'll need a full cast, and you'll be out of commission for at least a month." I felt a mix of panic and relief. Relief because it wasn't worse. Panic because I knew what a month away from work would mean. We had deadlines stacked like dominoes, and my tasks weren't the kind of things you could just hand off to someone else. Still, I thought my company, my so-called family, would understand. When I got home that evening, I typed out a careful message to my manager with my left hand, struggling with every word because my dominant hand was in a cast. "Hey, I just got back from the hospital. Doctor confirmed my arm is broken. He says no typing or heavy work for a month. I'll need some time off to recover." His reply came less than 2 minutes later. "You're exaggerating. You still have another hand. You can manage basic work. Don't abandon the team." I stared at the screen, shocked. Abandon the team? I had literally broken my arm. But apparently that didn't count as a valid excuse. The next morning, against all medical advice, I showed up at the office with my arm in a bright white cast. My manager barely glanced at it and just said, "Good, you're here. We're behind on deliverables. Sit down and start catching up." And that was the beginning of my nightmare. The first week back at the office with my arm in a cast was pure torture. Typing with one hand is slow enough when you're just answering a quick message. But when you're trying to write hundreds of lines of code, fix bugs, or document an entire system, it's a nightmare. Every keystroke felt like it took an eternity. My left hand cramped constantly from the awkward positions I had to use. I explained this to my manager, hoping he'd let me work reduced hours or maybe assign me something less intensive until I healed. But instead, he said, "Deadlines don't care about your arm. Just focus harder. You'll adapt." Adapt. As if I had just forgotten how to be productive. The worst part wasn't even the pain or the slowness. It was the attitude of my coworkers. At first, some of them offered sympathy. They asked me what happened, shook their heads, and said, "Man, that sucks." But as the days passed, sympathy turned into impatience. I'd hear whispers when I was too slow during a stand-up meeting. "He's dragging us down. Maybe if he didn't milk the injury, we'd actually hit deadlines." One guy even joked out loud, "Hey, maybe we should buy you a voice-to-code software. Or better yet, hire a monkey to type faster." Everyone laughed. Everyone except me. The pressure only grew worse. We had a major client review scheduled, and I was responsible for a core feature. Every night I stayed late at the office, typing with one hand until my vision blurred from exhaustion. My desk became a graveyard of empty coffee cups and energy drink cans. I kept telling myself, if I just push through, they'll see how dedicated I am. They'll respect me for this. But instead, I became the scapegoat. At one Friday meeting, my manager pulled up our project timeline. Red flags everywhere. We were behind by almost 2 weeks. He looked around the room, then his eyes locked on me. "We're falling behind because certain people can't keep up. If one person doesn't pull their weight, the whole team suffers." He didn't even say my name. He didn't have to. Everyone turned to look at me. My face burned with shame. That weekend, I went home and sat on my couch staring at my cast. My doctor's words replayed in my head. You need to rest. If you push yourself, you risk permanent damage. But how was I supposed to rest when my livelihood depended on pleasing a boss who thought broken bones were just an inconvenience? I kept convincing myself things would get better, that once the cast was off, I'd finally catch up and prove them wrong. But deep down, I knew I was stuck in a system that didn't care whether I was broken, sick, or exhausted as long as the work got done. And the worst part was yet to come. The client review was approaching like a storm cloud. Everyone could feel the pressure. But for me, it was unbearable. Every day I woke up with a knot in my stomach, dreading the hours ahead of me. I tried to keep up. I really did. I stayed in the office until midnight, pecking at the keyboard with my left hand, lines of code crawling across the screen at a snail's pace. My desk was always the last one lit up when the cleaners came by. They'd glance at me with pity, while my manager never once stayed late himself. He just sent reminder emails from home. Don't forget, the demo has to be flawless. No excuses. No excuses. That phrase echoed in my head constantly. My health started deteriorating fast. The cast on my arm itched constantly. My back hurt from leaning sideways to compensate for one-handed typing. And my left hand was so cramped that I sometimes had to shake it for minutes just to keep it moving. I lived on caffeine and vending machine snacks. Proper meals became a luxury I didn't have time for. One night, I actually fell asleep at my desk with my head on the keyboard. When I woke up, there were deep imprints of keys on my forehead, and I panicked thinking I had wasted precious hours of work time. Instead of resting, I just chugged another energy drink and forced myself to keep going. My coworkers weren't much help. If anything, they treated me as dead weight. We're all covering for him. One muttered during a team meeting. If he can't handle it, maybe he should step aside, another said, not even bothering to lower his voice. I wanted to scream at them. I didn't ask to break my arm. I didn't ask to be forced back into the office. But I bit my tongue. I couldn't afford to make enemies. The final week before the client demo was a blur of sleepless nights and mounting anxiety. I started hallucinating from lack of rest. Shadows flickered at the edge of my vision. And sometimes I swore I heard my name whispered when no one was around. My manager noticed my pale face and bloodshot eyes once and smirked. That's the dedication I like to see. Dedication. That word felt poisonous. I wasn't dedicated. I was breaking. And then came the meltdown. The night before the demo, we gathered in the conference room to do one last run-through of the system. Everyone was tense. My feature was supposed to be the centerpiece. I prayed silently that it wouldn't crash. But of course, it did. The screen froze. The program lagged. Then the whole system threw an error and collapsed in front of the entire team. My heart dropped into my stomach. The room was silent for a few seconds before my manager exploded. Unbelievable. We trusted you with this, and you can't even deliver a working product. Do you realize what's at stake tomorrow? I tried to explain. I reminded him that I'd been coding one-handed, that I had begged for help, that this wasn't entirely my fault. But he cut me off. Excuses. Always excuses. You let us down. The words hit harder than any broken bone. My coworkers avoided my eyes, pretending to be absorbed in their laptops, as if distancing themselves from my failure would keep them safe. That night, instead of going home, I stayed in the office until dawn trying to fix the bug. My casted arm throbbed, my left hand trembled, and tears blurred my vision. At 5 a.m., I finally collapsed onto the floor of the server room, sobbing quietly so no one would hear. For the first time, I wondered if this job, the so-called family, was worth destroying myself for. The morning of the demo arrived, and I felt like a zombie. I hadn't gone home. I hadn't showered. My shirt was wrinkled. My eyes were bloodshot, and my casted arm ached so badly that I could barely focus. Still, I dragged myself into the conference room, laptop in hand, praying that the system would hold together long enough to survive the client presentation. The clients arrived, polished, cheerful, ready to be impressed. My manager greeted them with his usual charm, pretending everything was running smoothly. He clicked through the slides, set up the software, and handed things off to me. Show them the feature you've been working on, he said, with a forced smile. My palms were sweaty. My heart raced. I launched the program. For a few glorious seconds, everything seemed fine. The clients nodded, intrigued. My manager smirked, as if claiming the credit already. And then, the screen froze again. The program crashed. Same error as the night before. The clients frowned. My manager's smile evaporated. He turned slowly toward me, his eyes like daggers. Unbelievable, he muttered under his breath, but loud enough for everyone to hear. The rest of the demo limped along, but the damage was done. The clients left unimpressed, politely saying they'd review other options. My manager didn't even wait until the door closed before unleashing his fury. You humiliated us. Do you understand that? Weeks of work ruined because you couldn't do your part. I wanted to shout back, to remind him that I had been forced to work with one hand, that I had begged for help, that my broken arm wasn't something I chose. But my throat closed up. No words came out, just silence. The rest of the team avoided me like I was contagious. They packed up their laptops quietly, not daring to get caught in the crossfire. I sat there, staring at the error message still frozen on the projector screen, feeling smaller than I'd ever felt in my life. That night, I didn't even try to go home. I stayed at my desk long after everyone had left, the office eerily silent around me. I looked at my reflection in the darkened monitor, pale, exhausted, broken, and realized I didn't recognize myself anymore. I used to love programming. I used to find joy in solving problems and building things that actually worked. But now, all I felt was dread. The very thing I had once been passionate about had become a source of constant pain. I thought about the company's motto, "We're a family." But real families don't abandon you when you're hurt. Real families don't mock you, push you past your breaking point, and then blame you for falling apart. That night was my emotional collapse. I sat in the empty office, cast resting on the desk, tears streaming down my face, and I asked myself a question I had been avoiding for weeks. Why am I still here? I had no good answer. The morning after the disastrous demo, I walked into the office expecting another round of humiliation. My manager didn't disappoint. He called me into a meeting room, shut the door, and launched straight into it. You embarrassed this company. You embarrassed me. If you can't handle pressure, maybe you're not cut out for this field. His words stung, but something inside me had shifted the night before. I was too tired, too broken, and too done to feel fear anymore. I took a deep breath and said the words I never thought I'd say. You're right. I can't handle this, and I'm not going to try anymore. He blinked, clearly not expecting that response. What's that supposed to mean? It means I quit, I said, my voice steady for the first time in weeks. I'm not destroying my health and sanity for a company that doesn't even care I broke my arm. You call this a family? Families don't treat each other like this. I'm done. For a moment, he just stared at me, speechless. Then his face twisted into anger. You'll regret this. Do you know how hard it is to find another job in this market? I stood up, adjusted the sling on my cast, and gave him a tired smile. I'd rather struggle to find a job than stay here and lose myself completely. And with that, I walked out. Leaving the building that day felt surreal. I expected to feel panic, regret, maybe even fear about the uncertain future ahead. But instead, I felt lighter. The weight that had been crushing me for weeks suddenly lifted. For the first time in months, I could breathe. The next few weeks weren't easy. I had to focus on healing, both physically and mentally. Money was tight, and there were moments I doubted myself. But slowly, I began to realize that quitting was the best decision I had ever made. I found freelance gigs I could handle at my own pace. I surrounded myself with people who actually cared about my well-being. And most importantly, I learned a lesson I wish I had known earlier. No job, no paycheck, and no so-called work family is worth sacrificing your health, your dignity, or your happiness. Looking back, I don't see myself as weak for quitting. I see myself as strong for walking away. Strong for realizing that my value isn't measured by how much pain I can endure for someone else's profit. So if you're reading this and you're stuck in a place that's breaking you, whether it's physically, mentally, or emotionally, please remember this. You are not replaceable as a human being, but to a toxic company, you will always be replaceable as an employee. Don't wait until you're broken to walk away.